Hi everyone, it's the triumphant return of Colin's Corner. Welcome to our little corner of the internet where we watch things and we talk about them, because this is the only place that people do that, right? If you're seeing this video, that means that the copyright strike is gone off of this channel. We can all celebrate. And what a better way to celebrate than watching a bunch of movies and talking about them, as I said previously. So here's the deal behind this, right? For the past couple of years, because the COV thing has been going on consistently, as most of you know if you're in the film community, or even if you're not. I don't know why I prefaced with that. Film festivals have been weird. Lots of less entries in them, as well as specifically they have been online. Some have been online in-person hybrids, and the first one to really adapt this whole thing was Sundance. In the beginning of every year, January, we have Sundance Film Festival. For the past 2 years, I have participated. In 2021, I got the all access pass because it was super cheap, and they have the whole under 25 thing, student kind of pass. I think you get 50% off. So I did that. And then in 2022, I didn't participate to that extent, but I did go to see 4 movies. Not go to see, but I got tickets for 4 movies that I was very interested in, including my favorite film of the year, After Yang. So yeah, this year, however, was really not planning on going at all. Didn't really have any interest. Just kind of wanted to focus on making videos, like the Everything Everywhere All at Once video. But lo and behold, for the holidays, I received a online pass as well as this hat as a present. So why would I not review them and talk about them with you in the most me fashion? So we're going to be watching 10 Sundance Film Festival films in 2 days. That's right, 2 days, maybe a little more. Okay, so maybe I'm lying. Maybe it's gonna be like 2 and like a quarter day, but you're just gonna have to bear with me, all right, and trust the process. Anyways, that's what we're going to be doing. I'm very excited to do it, and we're going to be ranking all of the films. We're going to be grading all of the films, and so here's how I did it, right? There are a bunch of films that are at the festival that are not available online that I really would have loved to see. For example, something like Past Lives, something like the new John Carney film. These are all films that I would have really liked to see there are more examples, obviously, I'd really like to see for this festival, but they're in theaters only. So I chose a bunch of films that would definitely make conversation, I think. And the thing about it is I chose some serious movies, 3 categories: some serious movies, some quirky movies, and some weird movies. So yeah, we are gonna go watch these movies and talk about them. First up is a film called Divinity, and I'm very excited for this one, if only for the fact that Moises Arias is in it. But now that I've watched the trailer for it, regrettably, I know that it looks right up my alley, and it looks like a lot of people don't like it. So we're gonna see how that goes. We'll talk to you then. Goodbye. All right, we're here. It is 11:39 on January 24th, and I just finished watching Divinity, the featured, I believe, debut of director Eddie Alcazar to start off Sundance. As I said in the intro of this video, I was very excited to see this one. I saw the preview yesterday just because I was somewhat interested, and it looks really weird. It looked really weird in the preview, and also I think Moises Arias is one of the most underrated actors that we have working today. His performance in Manos was brilliant, and more importantly, he was sensational in any Hannah Montana property. That being said, what did I actually think about it? Of course, I really, really loved it. I loved it. I'm sorry. I loved it. And the funny thing about this one is, if you go to the Letterboxd reviews, people either really like it or really do not like it. And I really liked it because of course I did. You see a weird movie about fetuses and aliens and youth serums and that type of stuff. Of course I'm gonna like it. No, but in all actuality, in the first 10 minutes of this movie, there is an exposition scene kind of dump with Bella Thorne giving the exposition, and I was kind of in a weird state. I was thinking, I don't actually know if I'm gonna like this as much as I thought I was going to. And funny enough, that's the only exposition dump in the entire movie, basically, that doesn't make sense for being where it is. But other than that, it is so much fun. It's able to balance the tones that it needs to. It can take itself seriously when it needs to, and it does so sparingly. But when it does need to have a serious moment, it's able to do that and then transition into leaning into the campiness of this 50 horror sci-fi B-movie vibe that it's got going on. And that's awesome. That's so cool that it's able to do that, because usually weird films like this aren't very tonally competent. They have one tone and it's weird. And if anything else isn't weird, it's poorly done. But this was done exquisitely, and it made me so happy watching that. So yeah, it's so good. And as I also said, it's way more coherent than weird films usually are. There's an actual plot line that, contrary to what people are saying on Letterboxd, you can definitely follow along with if you pay even a remote amount of attention. It's very direct. It's not as ambiguous as people and the trailer would make you believe. It's pretty straightforward, and I like that, but just because it's straightforward, it doesn't sacrifice any of its oddities or its weirdnesses. Or weirdness. That's the word I'm looking for. And that's, again, something that is really refreshing for someone who watches a lot of weird movies. Sometimes they get caught up in that weirdness and try to make it too weird and don't actually focus on the technical elements as much as just making it weird. But so it's not weirdness for the sake of weirdness. It actually has a point within the film and it actively adds to the story, which is just really good to see. All of the performances are really, really good. Steven Dorff as the main guy is in his transformation. He's really believable in turning into this thing. Not only are the prosthetics good on him, but really, really, really good performance in kind of losing sanity and turning into this otherworldly being. Moises Arias is great, as Moises Arias always is. Bella Thorne is only in the film for a small amount of time, and in that small amount of time, she plays a being that's kind of ethereal and she doesn't really need to do much but shift her voice into a certain tone, and it works pretty well for what it is. Emily Willis is actually fine for her screen time. She's not on screen very long, but she's okay, I guess, sufficient in what she needed to do. But the performance that I would like to really highlight in this film is actually Karrueche Tran. I've never seen Karrueche Tran in anything. I've only heard her name sometimes. I think she dated Chris Brown or something, right? And I've heard of her in other contexts that are not acting. But now that I have seen her act, I can say she is really not that bad. She's pretty good, in fact. And I think she's one of the best performances in the entire film. She's really able to switch her cadence of her voice depending on certain situations, and I know that's maybe a weird thing to compliment, but it is something that actors, especially early on in their career, have a hard time doing, so shout out to her on that. And finally, I would like to say that I have definitely for sure seen one of my top 10 scenes of the year in this movie, and that would be the final battle sequence of this film. I won't give away anything, so no spoilers, but it is done in this sort of like stop motion claymation action type of way. And you would think that doing that and switching into that format, it is so fluidly transitioned into, because of the weirdness. You set it up for the vibe that anything can happen, and then it does happen and it works. But not only that, it is so fun. It is the most fun part of the entire movie. I loved it. The action is so cool and kind of dorky in a way, but that kind of fits in with the low budget vibe that they have going on, the B-movie vibe that they have going on. Everything fits into the mold that they were attempting to create. Everything works towards filling up that vibe, and it's awesome. It's so good. It's well done for stop motion, I will also say. Definitely going to be one of my favorite scenes of the year, for sure. So this has been the best start to a Sundance Film Festival that I've had, I think. I loved this movie a lot. On a technical level, I'm aware that it's not as good as it is enjoyable. There are some stiff scenes from certain actors. There is a little bit of lack of explanation on certain subplots that are going on, but for the most part, everything is completely covered up. And the budgetary restraints sometimes do shine through a little bit because of the fact that they are trying to make it this grand spectacle, and sometimes they just don't have the budget for it. But that being said, there is absolutely nothing else like this out right now to this level with this type of aura to it. Not at all. And it is so enjoyable. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm going to give Divinity a 7 out of 10. What a fun film. What an enjoyable film. If you have the chance, I think there are still solo tickets available to this one. Go see it. Or go get the tickets online. I don't know about in person, but it is definitely worth the watch. And guess what? Here's the main thing. You're going to leave this film feeling a certain way about it. Whether you absolutely don't like it or you absolutely love it like me, there's going to be some type of emotional response that you are going to have. And I think that makes for a worthwhile viewing. So yeah, 7 out of 10. It's going to be number 1 on my Sundance ranking thus far. And so that is it for this review. We're going to move on to the next one. I don't remember what it is, but I'll let you know when we get there. So yeah, let's go. All right, it is 2:21 p.m. on January 24th, and I just finished watching Theater Camp, the debut feature film from Molly Gordon and Nick Lieberman based off of the short film from Molly Gordon and Nick Lieberman. Now, here's the context going into this film. Right? I hate to say it because this is outing myself publicly on the internet, but I was indeed a theater kid. Not a theater kid in the way that they're portrayed in cinema, but a kid that did do constant theater productions in high school and middle school. What does that say about me? You can interpret that for yourself. Hopefully judge me on my personality, not based on my past actions. I'm joking. I still love theater and all the things associated with it, acting and all that stuff. The problem is, the worst part about being in theater is theater people. They're awful, they're atrocious, they're very self-centered, they'll do whatever they want, and they don't really care about the well-being of others. So going into this, I was very worried about the PTSD that I could possibly have when watching this. Luckily, I really like Theater Camp. This is 2 for 2 on Sundance. Theater Camp is really fun. The specific thing that I like to talk about with Theater Camp is that it is a film that is remarkable in the modern age of comedy. You see, the thing is, with modern day comedies, generally you don't see films that are constantly going as much, like line after line, it's joke after joke, it's continuously going, there's no genre mixing, it is just a straight up comedy and it doesn't stop. You don't see that very often. And even when you do see that, it is an even more rare occurrence to see a comedy that keeps going like that doesn't really miss on a joke. When there's comedies that keep going like that, especially in the modern age, there's gonna be misses. There are misses all the time. But with Theater Camp, aside from maybe one or two strays that don't exactly hit the mark, everything is hilarious. It is a wonderful parody of the vibe of a theater establishment, theater adults who constantly look back on their time as children, as their heyday, and haven't really emotionally moved forward with maturity in that regard. It's a wonderful parody of that. It's a wonderful parody of Community and stuff like that. I think that the performances in this are fantastic from everyone. Specifically Jimmy Tatro of Life According to Jimmy fame on YouTube, which again, every time I see him in a film, it's like, I know obviously he's huge, but it's like a proud father moment. Like this guy really came from this platform and is now doing big things and is doing good films. And then Noah Galvin is really, really good in this as well. Both great performances, doing exactly what they do. Noah Galvin playing Glenn, kind of the theater tech guy, perfectly, very mild-mannered, very well done. Molly Gordon is good. Ben Platt is Ben Platt. He's fine. I'm not the biggest fan of Ben Platt, but he is good in what he is given, and it's just so much fun, man. Constant jokes that hit every time. And the thing about this film that is going to be huge coming out of Sundance, it is in comparison to the last film that I did, Divinity, it is so widely accessible. Most people will love this film. There's going to be a small amount of people who hate it, and I don't honestly blame them for hating it, considering the immense PTSD that I did have towards the beginning of the film, like, oh my god, these people exist. But once you get into it and realize what's going on and they're in on the joke, it does work out pretty well. I had a great time watching Theater Camp. Can't believe I'm saying that sentence. Another point that I'd like to hit on is the kids. Usually in these types of films, once again, where there are children and musical performance going together, they're not good. They're never really good. They're okay, at best serviceable, at worst absolutely horrendous. But in my opinion, the kids are way better performers than the adults. They are amazing at singing, at dancing, and at acting in general. They're great. It's awesome. So shout out to that ensemble of kids that I hope to see in future productions of things. They were really good. The problem here for Theater Camp for me lies in a couple of things. A, there is a bit of a hard time transitioning into serious dialogue because everything is such a joke. And I don't think that the actors that are required to do the serious dialogue, Molly Gordon and Ben Platt, in the obligatory end of second act blow up of characters, I don't think that they really, they don't reach to the place that they should when doing dramatic dialogue. There are jokes scattered amongst the dramatic dialogue, but I think that those jokes overtake the actual seriousness that needs to happen in that scene, which it's fine for what it's trying to do, but I don't think it ultimately works as well as a film in general. Also, the other thing I'd like to say that is a negative about this film is specifically Molly Gordon and Ben Platt's characters are both insufferable human beings. And then at the beginning of the film, you see them be these insufferable human beings, and you're like, okay, well, in the future, throughout the rest of the film, we will get a character arc here that brings them to a point of being at least manageable, and they'll realize the type of people that they've been. And that's cool and all, except that never happens at all. They're just insufferable throughout the film, and then when they get in their argument, they just randomly make up because, hey, something happened. There's no effort being put in on either end to make a change within themselves. They just magically end up being okay with each other. And I guess that's fine for the type of film that this is being. It's just a straight comedy parody thing. But it doesn't really work as an actual film for me in that regard. So they just maintain that insufferability throughout the entire thing, and I wish that something would have happened with those two characters in regards to their morality developing and just kind of growing up and maturing in any regard whatsoever. But it doesn't, and I guess that's okay, but it does detract from the film quite a bit for me. But once again, don't take any of that too seriously, because I had a great time watching Theater Camp. I loved it a lot. It was so much fun, and the end is hilarious. The final scene, which is the play that they're putting on, it's just so funny, over the top. Throughout the whole film, it's consistently funny, but that final scene is one of the most hilarious things that I've seen this year. Yet, granted, it is the first month, but keep in mind that Madrigan was this year, so that is a compliment to Theater Camp. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, and it is going to slide in right below Divinity in my second slot out of 2. And, you know, here's the thing, right? I think that actually Divinity and Theater Camp are kind of similar films in a way that they tackle their subject matter, being able to ride into that campiness, no pun intended for this one, but also in other scenarios maintain a level of realism or seriousness in a way, grounded. That's the one thing. Although the film, I don't think, handles serious situations super well, it is pretty realistic and it is pretty grounded in what happens in the film for the most part. Obviously, there are some parts that go over the top, but Theater Camp is really good. Everyone will like it. It gets a universal recommendation for me. So yeah, that was fun. On to the next movie, shall we? Or shall we not? Transition! Hello everyone, it is 4:52 p.m. on January 24th, and I just finished my viewing of To Live and Die and Live from Kasim Basir, a film about a film director coming back to Detroit to bury his stepfather and all of the trials and tribulations that go along with it. This is the most conflicted I've been on a Sundance film thus far. The first two I very much enjoyed, and this one is kind of hard to wrap your head around. This is more of an all-encompassing issue. This felt like they had two movies, a good movie and a bad movie, and they just smacked them together. Sorry, that's an audio spike. Smacked them together, and there's no sense into when it's good and when it's bad, but it's just good and bad together. Let's start off, and it's not one of those things where some aspects are good, some aspects are bad. There are certain times where an aspect is good and certain times where an aspect is bad. For example, the prominent thing I can think of is the score. There are times where the score is excellent. It's reminiscent of these films that I love in the same ire as like a Moonlight or a Last Black Man in San Francisco or a Residue, things like that. The score is along those lines. Lots of strings, very, very flowy, perfectly done. And then there are other times where the score is just not good, and it's just stiff, and it doesn't flow within the scene that it's trying to score. It just doesn't work in cohesion with it. It's not good. Let's talk about the acting. There are some points where there's an actor who is doing well, and then the next scene will happen and they just won't be at that same level of performance because they have to do a different tone and emote differently, and it seems like they're only able to do certain types of cadences and emotions, and it just doesn't work very well. And then there's also just a sister character who I think is terrible the entire time and undermines all of the good elements of every scene that she is in. She is really, really bad. It sounds like she's reading off of a script for like a dramatic monologue for an audition. It's horrible. Anyways, let's talk about another thing, the cinematography. At some points, this is shot brilliantly. It's shot cinematically. It is so well done. And then there are points where it looks like one of those horrible direct to VOD prime movies that you see that look the worst of the worst and like super basic cinematography. The quality of the camera almost looks differently at times. And just a weird overall aspect of the whole thing. There are some consistently good things though. For example, the main performance by the lead, Amin Joseph, is consistently really good. Very, very good portrayal of a haunted person, a tortured person who doesn't really want to reveal to the world that he's tortured, so he keeps it inside. Very internal performance, if you will, that eventually becomes external, but he is really, really good the majority of the time. The big thing that I will say that can differentiate the good from the bad is the pacing specifically, and it aids the film so well and detracts from this film so significantly. The first hour of this film is molasses slow on every front. The scenes take a long time to get over with. The characterization of the characters doesn't really go anywhere. We don't really learn anything about anyone. There's no backstory behind what's happening that's given, or explanation of why these people are the way they are. And then in the last 40 minutes or so, it really, really, really ramps up. It really gets good, and things start unraveling quicker, and in a natural way. It's so slow at the beginning that it's unnatural. I understand wanting to build up that ambiguity and build up the anticipation for your audience, but there's a certain point where it just becomes unrealistic that things unfold this slow at a snail's pace, but they do it way better in the last 40 minutes, and it kind of brings everything together in that 40 minutes, which retroactively does help the first hour a bit, but also at the same time that doesn't excuse that first hour, if you will. It doesn't make up for all of the blandness going on there. So yeah, there's a really good movie in here and a really bad movie in here. I'm sorry I don't have that much more to say about this, but I feel like that's a good enough thing. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it is still going to get a 5 out of 10 for me, because as I said, that last 40 minutes does supplement some of the slowness of that first hour. It helps that translate a little bit better in the eyes of the viewer. So yeah, it's a 5 out of 10. It is going at number 3, below Divinity and Theater Camp. Number 3, not a bad film. Hesitantly, it will get my recommendation. There are people who will like it, there are people who won't like it, but I don't think that it will garner that much of a negative response from people. It's fine. It's okay. Nothing special about it, but it's an overall solid film that doesn't do itself any service or help at all in being the way that it is. And then does kind of do help for being the way it is. I explained it already in the review. So that's it. That is the third movie of Sundance down. We're going to go watch the next one. I will talk to you then. This one is, been hearing a lot about this one in a negative way. So let's see if I feel the same way and have my first negative experience of Sundance. Hello, how's it going? It is currently 7:22 p.m. on January 24th, and I've just finished my fourth feature film of the Sundance Film Festival, and that would be Cat Person, the Susanna Fogel feature starring Emilia Jones and Nicholas Braun. A love story for the modern age, if you will, or maybe not so much of a love story. Who knows? You'd have to watch it to find out, but you're here for me to review it. People meet, people do things, and then things go wrong. That's how life works, right? Anyways, let's talk about what Cat Person is. Cat Person is one thing more than anything, and that is uncomfortable. Cat Person makes you feel gross and icky. Cat Person makes you want to close your eyes and turn off the whole film and run away and disinfect yourself. It is gross. It's not in the way of, this is actually disturbing, but in the way of I'm cringing out of my body. I'm having out of body cringe experience. But here's the problem with Cat Person for me. I'm having a hard time differentiating between what percentage of my cringing was because of the level of uncomfortability that they are forcing upon you. That is the goal of the filmmakers. And how much was I cringing because of how bad it was? I feel like it's an equal amount, but it's hard to differentiate sometimes between the two. So let's start off with the fact that Cat Person, as I said, is a very uncomfortable film to watch. There's points of dialogue that are just insane, in a bad way, and it's so overwhelming that it just shakes you to your core. But on the other hand, there are some really bad, corny lines of dialogue that just are very, very weird social commentary that is forced in there. And I get that that's kind of the point of one specific character that does that, but at the same time, it does get to be a little bit too much, bordering the line of, I know that people are like this, but it even kind of jumps that line for me from the most hardcore feminists sometimes are not even like the way that this character is behaving specifically. But yeah, so it's hard to really get a grasp on sometimes when the dialogue is so cringy because that's the intention, or because it's just not good dialogue. And I will say, actually, I do think that the plot works here pretty well, actually. It's another one of those films, like I said, with To Live and Die and Live, where there's a lot of mystery going on around the first basically 3/4, and then the last half an hour really kind of wraps everything up in a perfect bow to really get everything together. You know what I mean? And I did enjoy that part of it. That being said, this is the same problem that I had with the other movie, To Live and Die and Live. The pacing is so not good. When I first checked how long we had been through the movie, and it was half an hour, and I felt like the film had been going on for an hour. The next time I checked, it felt like it was an hour and a half. It was only 45 minutes. These 30-minute increments feel like they're going on for hours and hours. The pacing is so slow, and more so than that, maybe everything's kind of repetitive. The points are repetitive. Maybe part of it is because of how unbearably skin-crawlingly cringeworthy it is to watch, so it feels like it's going on longer because of that. But there is also, I can identify issues with the pacing of the film simultaneously. So you see how it's difficult to differentiate, because you get so into that cringeworthy mindset that it just elongates everything, and it's hard to, the lines are definitely blurred with Cat Person. The one thing that I can say for certain 100% is I think the best part of the film is the performance from Emilia Jones and the performance from Nicholas Braun. Two very interesting different takes on the world and society and their roles in that world and society, and everything gets just so twisted up from different perspectives, and that is a credit to the writing as well, but I don't think that it would have been effectively pulled off in the way that it is if not for those performances from Emilia Jones and Nicholas Braun. So a shout out to them. On a technical level, it's competent. There's nothing really inspiring here on that. It's just fine. It doesn't go above and beyond, and I kind of think that with this type of film, it really could. Bending perspectives, it opens such a doorway to bending cinematography and editing and kind of moving it at your will and not doing things so standard and by the book. And I feel like they could have done that, but they definitely don't do that here. It is very boring on that level, but it's not bad in that way. It's just kind of mediocre, which was disappointing because, as I said, so much you could have done with that, but they just didn't. Also, I guess because, again, I am on YouTube. I'm a YouTuber no matter the size of the channel. Shout out to Liza Koshy for being the second YouTuber or at least originated on YouTuber, to show up in one of these movies, albeit her role was much smaller than Jimmy Tatro's in Theater Camp, and this film is definitely, in my opinion, spoilers, worse than Theater Camp. She is there, and she is fine for the role that she's given. So yeah, shout out to her. So once again, I am feeling pretty mixed on this one, and I guess it's kind of similar to Live and Die and Live, because that's such a difficult name to continuously say over and over again, because there are some good things in this film and there are some bad things in this film, and the difference between this and To Live and Die and Live is, in To Live and Die and Live, they are far more drastically good and bad. And that's why I said that it just seemed like they slammed two movies together. With this one, there were good things and there were bad things, but they weren't as drastic, so they were able to kind of mesh into each other, and seeing these things believably be in a film together made sense to me. So ultimately, I am going to give Cat Person a 5 out of 10. It's fine. As for a recommendation, I think I can give this a recommendation because, as I said, it does have some really interesting things to say about the world that we're living in right now, in like dating culture and just like pressure on women and expectations of men, lots of gender role commentary that does work. But there is also some social commentary that falls completely flat, mostly in the dialogue department. But yeah, it's fine, and there are some twists and turns that do make the last half an hour really enjoyable to watch. So yeah, 5 out of 10. It is gonna go below To Live and Die and Live though, so it's gonna be number 4 out of 10 thus far, but 4 out of 4 right now. So next up, we are going to be watching another movie, as you kind of figured by this whole video anyways. And this will be the last of the day. At the pace we're going, we'll get this done in 2 days, so I'm excited. I will see you in the next one. Hello, good world. It is 10:13 p.m. on January 24th, and we have finally finished the 5th screening of the day for the 2023 Sundance Film Festival, and that film is Magazine Dreams, the sophomore effort from Elijah Bynum, starring Jonathan Majors, Taylor Page, and Haley Bennett. Now, here's why I sound the way I sound. I have come off of 3. I scheduled this so wrong. I front-loaded this insanely. I've just come off of 3 films that are all very intense, that are all about very conflicting characters, that are all kind of exhausting to watch in at least somewhat not a good way. Elijah Bynum is, of course, the person who made Hot Summer Nights. Never seen it. Didn't really interest me. Magazine Dreams did interest me because I have been on the Jonathan Majors bandwagon since The Last Black Man in San Francisco in July of 2019. And I've been riding that bandwagon to now. And now he's in everything. He was just in Devotion, in Magazine Dreams. He's going to be in the new Ant-Man movie. He's going to be Kang, one of the most powerful people in the universe, or so I've heard. He is great. And guess what? Surprise, surprise, he is the best part of this movie, and it's not really even close. If Jonathan Majors does not star in this film, the film either A, doesn't work, you can't have anyone else but him in the role, or B, it's a 3 out of 10 at best if you get any other actor beside him, basically. He is magnificent. His acting is visceral. His performance, both internally and externally, facial expressions, body language, dialogue, everything is insanely well done. So brilliant in all ways, shapes, and forms. I am going to absolutely, unless another one comes out of the woodwork, I'm gonna need that Oscar nomination for this year, or I don't know what I'll do. I do know what I'll do. I'll just complain about it online. But anyways, he is that good. I've seen a couple people on Letterboxd saying best performance of the decade, and I don't necessarily think that they're wrong. I think I agree with them. He is that good. Playing once again a tormented soul who doesn't know how to not be tormented. That is his whole identity, is being tormented. Not in a like self-obsessed way. Well, eventually a self-obsessed way. But yeah, Jonathan Majors holds this film together by a pin. And if he is removed from it, the tapestry collapses. Brilliant work from Jonathan Majors. And now this is one of those films where I have a complicated relationship with it. I like to, if you don't know, I grade things on a critical scale and I grade things on an enjoyment scale. And lots of people don't like me for this. You tell me The Room is a good movie. I enjoy the heck out of it. You tell me the Neil Breen films, not Sharknado, I'm not really a big fan of those, but those types of so bad it's good films, you tell me those are good films, and hey, to each their own, but I disagree. Anyways, every year, it seems, I watch a good film to really good film that I really do not enjoy watching. For example, last year, Tar is a masterclass in almost every sense of the word. Cate Blanchett's performance is one of the best of the decade also, and the dialogue is brilliant. The blocking of the film I think is very underrated. I didn't like it. I didn't have a good time watching it. I'll probably never watch it again. Is it a great film? Yes. Did I not have a good time with it? Also yes. For 2021, we have Annette. Annette is a really, really innovative musical with really good performances from Adam Driver and the rest of the cast in the film. Very good songs, sung relatively well by non-singers. Did not have any enjoyment watching that movie. And this, although I had more enjoyment than both Annette and Tar watching it, I still didn't have a particularly good time with it. In fact, I would argue it was a bad time. And that is from the fact that this film is 1,000,000% a chore to get through. But that is, and I can tell, only by choice. There's no bad filmmaking involved here. It's shot incredibly, it's edited together very well. The acting on all fronts is great, as I already said. But oh my God, it is painstaking to sit through and watch this man continuously spiral into absolute mental hell, basically. It is a horrible thing to sit through, and I don't want to sit through that again, but I can't deny that it is a good movie, and it is done well. It's just something that I did not have a great time with. But I will say this, more so than the other two I mentioned, it's not great. It's not a really good film. There are problems with it, and once again, I will say this, there is some things that there are some things that happen in this film that I do not believe would really happen in real life. Let's just put it this way without spoiling it. On a certain part of the spiral that he goes down, I do not believe he would be allowed to walk in the streets anymore, or he would be at least facing some sort of repercussion from the law, or a more active sort of repercussion from the law. But he just is allowed to walk everywhere and do everything, and I don't think that's realistic, and it kind of took me out of the film a couple of times. But yeah, ultimately that is overshadowed by Majors' performance, because that's really all the movie is. There's nothing else to it. It is just a character study of this one character. We see other characters on screen for, at max, I think, 5 minutes each. There are a couple, like 4 or 5 supporting characters, but they all revolve around him. And he is so good that he is able to take the entirety of the film on its back and drag it. Will I say this? I do think that Elijah Bynum does have some style. with his filmmaking. I haven't seen Hot Summer Nights, but I've seen clips from it, and now I've seen the entirety of this, and I think that he has incredible potential to make a great film. I don't think it's going to be in his next couple. I think he really needs to hone in on other aspects of his storytelling craft to really, really get there. But at this point, I don't think he is. Also, have seen a couple of comparisons to both Taxi Driver and Joker, and I really think we need to have a conversation about comparing every single male that has mental health problem film to each other. This is not Joker at all. I'd argue this isn't Taxi Driver either. There is more heart in the character that Jonathan Majors plays than either of those two ever exhibited. And I think that just because this film does have a certain aura about it, people are just blatantly throwing out, or just in a blasé manner throwing out, this is just this, because they have like somewhat of a similarity, and that's just not the case. So I don't like that. I think that this film completely removes itself from that aura with certain things that it does in difference from Joker and Taxi Driver. Although, and I think Taxi Driver and maybe Joker are better films, but there is something very, very different about Magazine Dreams. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I am going to give Magazine Dreams a 6 out of 10. It is going to slide in right below Theater Camp and right above To Live and Die and Live. It is a solid film that I would recommend once again, but that is it for day one of the 2023 Sundance Film Festival watch through that we're going through right now. Day two is very different. It has a lot more dramas, it has a horror film, and a lot more personable, more heartfelt films I think are coming. And I'm very glad that it will not be as intense as this experience was. But that is it for me for tonight. I will see you all in the morning, and we will talk then. Ciao. 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 Hi, how's it going? It is day 2 of the Sundance Film Festival Marathon. It is 12 p.m. and I have just finished my 6th screening of the festival, and that would be All Dirt Road's Taste of Salt, the already picked up A24 project helmed by director Raven Jackson. Now, the interesting thing about this one going into it is on Letterboxd, when you just look at the normal reviews, the first 3 are there, and then you have to click on more reviews, obviously, on your mobile device to see more reviews. So the first 3 reviews, there's David Ehrlich, somebody else, and then another one that doesn't have any rating on it, or didn't have any rating on it when I looked last time. And I saw 3 stars, 2.5 stars. I was like, okay, it'll be fine, it'll be all right. And I start watching it today, and I'm like, what? This is so good. What are they talking about? So I go to Letterboxd reviews again. I pause the film, go back, and I scroll down, and they're all like 5 stars, 4.5 stars. I'm like, oh, okay. So of course, people who are popular hate this or don't find it as good as the people who are, well, them of course. All Dirt Road's Taste of Salt is really, really, really good. It is by far the best thing I've seen at this festival thus far, and I don't know if that's because this is a film that was made, once again, right up my alley. We've had a couple of those. Divinity was made right up my alley, and this one is in a completely different way right up my alley. I was a writing minor in college, and one of my favorite things to write was a subsection of poetry that I had never heard of until I took a class in writing poetry, and that type of poem is a nature poem. A nature poem can either be a poem that it is a poem that is about nature, but you can either go outside and write it about the things that you're observing, or write it from home and have that experience there and recall things. All Dirt Road's Taste of Salt is 1,000,000% a nature poem. Everything in this film revolves around water, around grass, around the nature of humans as well, if we can extend it to that, about touch, about our interactions with the nature, our interactions with ourselves within nature. The fun thing about this film is that adds to that nature poem vibe that it gives off is basically, I think maybe 2 scenes happen inside. Everything else is outdoors, with the nature taking center stage. It is a character in itself. As corny as that sounds, and as often as you've probably heard that, it is actually true in this scenario. The cicadas are constant, and they add an atmosphere to an already very docile, emotional, very kind, very almost ethereal experience that you're going through. And God, did I need this one. After 3 very intense films that plodded along, that were very, intense, it was so nice to just sit back and enjoy an experience like this. One that's gentle, one that's filled with acceptance and kindness. Even though there is devastation in there, just the continuum of moving on past your problems. A problem that I see a lot of people have with this is the fact that it is plotting. I've seen plotting before on this film specifically in some reviews. I think that is interesting. I can understand where they're coming from, but I absolutely do not agree. In films like Magazine Dreams and To Live and Die and Live, there are and Cat Person even too, there are certain shots where nothing happens and you're just stuck on it, and there's just no progress being made or nothing to be said that the shot is worth that amount of time, if that makes sense. With All Dirt Road's Taste of Salt, there's always something happening with the hands. There's subtext that you can take from that moment based on the interactions that are happening within this very long shot. Sometimes they are pushed to the forefront, but sometimes they are more subtle than that. And that is what I love about this film. There is so much going on, but it's not overwhelming. It's little things that you can catch here and there, and that is just so awesome, so good. There's, for example, there are 2 incredibly long scenes where hugging is happening, and you know the context in one and you don't in the other, and so you can interpret things a certain way, and you can retroactively go back and interpret things. It's so layered in a way, but also simplistic. I know I sound like that Red Letter Media where I'm like, it's complex yet simple, but I'm being so dead ass right now. There's so much to enjoy about this film. I will say, at certain points, although I enjoyed it for the most part, the non-linear structure of the film can kind of weigh it down and can kind of get in its way of telling the story, and it did take me a couple of moments at certain places to be like, okay, where are we in the timeline that's happening right now? What is the context of this conversation? And I needed that moment to really get my head back in the scene, and that does detract from the viewing experience for me a little bit. But once I got in, I was good to go. It's not like it took me out of it, and then once I got it, it took me a while to get back in. I was immediately back into the scene. So that is something that I have to commend about the film. I loved it. I think it's funny that I think there's a production company at the beginning of this one called Tender, and this is one of the most tender films that I've seen in the decade. It's so nice to watch a film that's filled with love and hope and sadness, but not sadness that overwhelms the overall positive message that the film has to say. Is so good. It's cathartic almost to see that on screen. It is just wow in that way. And so I had an amazing time with All Dirt Road's Taste of Salt. There are only a couple of things that I can really criticize it on. It was my favorite, maybe. Let me think about that. It was, you know what? It was the most enjoyable cinematic experience I've had of the decade. Enjoyable, specifically. I just sat back, I relaxed. Is that maybe because of the predecessors I watched yesterday? I don't think so. I like to think I'm more objective than that, but that could be an additional factor to it. But yeah, man, even films I watched last year that I liked and I thought were maybe better than this, such as After Sun, such as After Yang, such as Banshees, Triangle of Sadness. This film specifically is just a breath. It's just a breath of fresh air. It's a wave of cool breeze. It's like water rushing over you. It's so relaxing, and I loved it. And I loved it a lot. Ultimately, at the end of the day, this is going to get an 8 out of 10 for me. And so clearly it goes into the number one slot out of the 6 films that I've watched thus far. The highlight of the festival. I loved it. Could not give this a bigger recommend. The good news is, because it is an A24 film, it is probably going to get somewhat at least of a wide release, if not a very good limited release. So go see it in theaters when you can, when it is available. It is worth it. Raven Jackson, man. I guess I didn't talk about this. It's so nice to see. We saw it last year with, as I mentioned previously, Charlotte Wells and After Sun. It is so nice to see a debut feature have such a vision, have such a distinct and unique style to it. And whether you like it or not, you have to admit there is a very unique voice to this. And I love seeing films like that. In a wasteland of mimics and copycats. It's just really is a breath of fresh air, and I loved it so much. What a wonderful way to start the day. This day is actually stacked, I've realized, with a bunch of films that I think are probably going to be good. So I'm excited for the next one. The only horror film, surprising for me, that I've picked from this festival. The only one really that was available that I was interested in. So yeah, I will see you in the next one. And we're back. It's currently 2:55 p.m. on January 25th, and we're here to talk about the 7th film that I've watched on my 2023 Sundance Film Festival marathon, and that would be Run Rabbit Run from Dana Reed and written by Hannah Kent. Now, this is a horror film to some extent, and I had to get a horror film in my film festival viewing, as I always do, my favorite genre probably, and lo and behold, I've chosen what I have to imagine is the absolute worst one. I am so not a fan of Run Rabbit Run. On the surface, you could mistake it for a good film. It looks pretty well. The cinematography is relatively well done. Nothing spectacular, but definitely does portray a boding atmosphere, kind of brooding, kind of building up a tense atmosphere through that expression. It is acted very well, specifically from Sarah Snook. She carries most of the film on her back, and even the child actor in this is good as well. Surprisingly, yeah, you don't usually see that, but she was good. Not great, but she did better than needed for her role, so I count that as good. I know I'm talking in circles a little bit because on the surface it looks fine, it looks good, but then you get to the other points where you have to ask yourself, what was the point of this movie? What was the story trying to tell? And ultimately, nothing. There was absolutely no point of this film. Last year, I saw a film that I did a review on my second channel called Don't Worry, Darling. You may have heard of it. Lots of drama revolved around it. And I said in my review that Don't Worry, Darling is just Hollywood running 300 popular psych thrillers through a machine and taking an amalgamation of that surface level stuff without actually taking interest in what makes those films good under the surface, what it actually needs. And I feel the same way about this. It's like it took a bunch of psych horror classics, ran them through a machine, came out with a script, but didn't really have because it's ran through a machine, it doesn't have the heart behind it. It doesn't have the actual finesse. It's just a bunch of rip-off copycat BS. In my opinion, very similar, and many people will say it's similar to the Babadook. Don't really see the Hereditary comparisons, and I think even the Babadook is a bit of a stretch because it's, they're both Australian. Haha, we get it. My big problem with this film is that we have absolutely, for a film that sets up so much context, there's no real context. We don't know why our main characters act the way they are. We don't even really know that what happens with the inciting incident, and that knowing what would happen there would help a lot in determining how we are supposed to perceive these characters. It seems like the film is trying to work with ambiguity in a mysterious way, but it ends up just being ambiguity in a way that leads you to become confused about what the film is even trying to do or say. Nobody in the cast is really that likable in characters, I mean. A, because they're just not great people, or B, we don't have the expertise on the subject to really understand why they're acting the way they are. What's happening with this daughter and why is she acting the way she is? We never actually know. It seems like they're trying to imply something, but they do it in the most brazen, terrible. It's overt in a certain way, but again, they don't really give anything of substance in that way. They try and drop these hints for you, but they never really get to the core of the issue. It's really hard to talk about this without going into spoilers, but I'm doing my best. It's just, there's nothing there. We don't know anything about anything really. And that's a really frustrating thing to observe while watching a film. There's obviously some trauma going on with Sarah Snook's character, and the depth of which that trauma runs isn't really explained at all. There's obviously something otherworldly going on with Sarah Snook's daughter, and guess what? We don't know what it is. We don't know there are a couple of options that it could be, and it's never really expanded upon which one it actually is. The ending is terrible and corny, and also just another open-ended thing, and not open-ended in a way that provokes questions like going over certain ways in which it can be interpreted. It's questions as in, what was this? Why did it happen this way? What was the point of the entire film? There's no point to it, and that's the answer to it. It very much frustrated me. There is, of course, again, as I said, surface level, there's a sheen of a well put together film, but when you look even remotely under that sheen and surface, it's just completely barren, nothing there. Very disappointing, very frustrating film to get through. Ultimately, I would give it a 3 out of 10. I have to respect the technical elements to some degree, but there's also a bunny in this, and we really don't ever understand what the point of the bunny is other than it's a bunny, and it's weird. That's it. But yeah, it's boring, it's annoying At least even with the other films that I talked about that were a chore to get through, there was a direct line of thinking that you could follow. That is not here, and I'm not saying I don't like ambiguous films. I don't like films that think that they're saying something when in all reality they're not saying anything at all. So yeah, that's it for this review. Sorry this one is shorter than the other ones. I don't have much to say about it other than it sucks. 3 out of 10. It's gonna go right at the bottom of the board at 7 out of 7. Hopefully, the good news is the next 3 should be good films. I've hand curated this list of watching in order to make it that way. So yeah, we will see you in the next one, which I can guarantee will be better than Run Rabbit Run. An absolute not recommend for me. Go watch basically any other horror movie in existence and you will get more of an experience than you would with this. So yeah, no, bad. Okay, it is 4:59 on January 25th, and I have just finished my 8th viewing of this 2023 Sundance Film Festival marathon, and that would be Sometimes I Think About Dying, starring Daisy Ridley, a film that I heard a lot of good things coming out of its initial in-person screenings, and Daisy Ridley is good in mostly everything she does. We're not counting Chaos Walking. Chaos Walking was a disaster on all fronts, but I think she's a pretty talented actress, and guess what? This is actually good. It's good. It's nothing really to write home about in any way, shape, or form. It is every year there is a solid indie movie that has really interesting themes about loneliness and self-realization and things along those lines. And it's good. It tackles those subject matters properly. It doesn't really navigate outside of those kind of basic parameters though, and that's what holds it back from being a great film. But it is really good, and it's proficient in most things that it does. And that's really what Sometimes I Think About Dying is. Really great Daisy Ridley performance. Once again, the theme of this Sundance seems to be, for me at least, from all of the things that I've seen, except for one film, which was the one I just watched last. The theme is that, no, 2 ago, other than that, adults who are dealing with being emotionally stunted and having problems fitting into the world, magazine dreams, To Live and Die and Live, Divinity even, all of the cat person. They're all like that, and I will say that I do think this one handles it the best. The pacing of this film is really well done. It never felt like we were holding on to something for too long. The awkwardness was intentional because of the character that Daisy Ridley plays, this incredibly socially awkward human being who doesn't really know how to interact or even get herself to a place where she feels comfortable in most situations most of the time. But she is brilliant. She does it so well. And she is kind of what holds the film together in that sense. I'd say it's top 3 performances that I've seen at the fest thus far. I'd also like to give a shout out to Dave Merhej, who I have actually never really seen before. But I looked in, he's apparently a stand-up comic who I think has been on some TV shows, if I'm correct. If I'm not, that's okay. He is a wonderfully warm and charismatic romantic lead, and it is so nice to see a romantic lead and 2 people that actually seem like they have chemistry with each other without it being forced over the top or just being non-existent. It's the perfect amount, and it develops at the perfect rate. It's really, really nice to see, man. And this is technically, is this a rom-com kinda? It's more of a rom-dram than a rom-com, and it's not even really about the rom, but I guess you could technically qualify it as that. It is just so refreshing and relaxing to see that level of it didn't stress me out ever or annoy me watching these two people gradually take steps towards being more interested in each other. I don't think a lot of films do that nowadays, and it's good to see one that does. This also resonated with me on a personal level, actually, because I have incredibly big social anxiety. I'm a relatively large guy. I'm 6'4", and it's very difficult to navigate around places without feeling like I'm constantly in the way of something. So that prevents me sometimes from interacting in social situations that I normally would, because my brain holds me back from that. And I'm not saying that the causation of mine and Daisy Ridley's issues are the same, but I do think that the results garners are somewhat the same. So it was nice to see that on screen. It really actually helped me feel a little bit more comfortable in yearning that level of social interaction that she sees towards the end of the film. It was really, really nice to see a film that I could directly resonate. Of course, some of these films like All Dirt Roads, Taste of Salt, and to a level, on a maybe not so good level, Theater Camp, resonate with me. But this one really resonated with me deep down, and that was really nice. It was just another breath of fresh air, if you will. I know I keep reusing the same statements, but hey, sue me. Of course, let's talk about negatives. In the negative, as I kind of said at the beginning, this is just a generic indie film that talks about the same subjects that lots of indie films do, and it doesn't break out of those constraints at all, or basic limitations that are generally set for these types of films. It operates strictly within those, and that's not a bad thing, but it does hold you back, for me, from really exploring that higher level of like great filmmaking. There are certain moments here, specifically in the sequences where she is thinking about dying, that there are interesting tactics put in there with the editing and the cinematography, and I enjoyed those, but especially with the premise being, hey, this woman constantly thinks about dying and how she could die. I feel like you could have done a lot more with that than you did. I understand that it is common, quirky indie drama, so I don't think you could take it with what they were doing here. I understand why they didn't take it to the next level. You want your base. I think it's probably rated PG-13. There's nothing about this that would indicate an R rating, but you never want to go past that barrier to make it less accessible to people. But yeah, it's good, but I do actually think there is a world in which this film could have been like great, but that would require it to be a completely different film with a completely different intention than this one was made with. And I am completely satisfied with this. And once again, if you try to make that film or go in depth at a more high artsy level, you could very easily fail. So I am fine with the product that we've been given with this film. Yeah. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm going to give Sometimes I Think About Dying a 7 out of 10, and it is going to fall into the number 2 slot, right below All Dirt Roads, Taste of Salt, and right above Divinity. It is a solid movie, and I had a really good time with it, and I was absolutely right about backlogging this final day with films that I would enjoy more, probably. It was fun, I enjoyed it, and it gets, once again, a universal recommend for me. I can't see anyone not really liking this movie. Maybe not enjoying it as much as I did, but not like actively disliking it. It's pretty accessible to everyone, easily digestible. Again, as I said, the pacing works perfectly. You never really feel like you're there for a long time, and it is only 93 minutes, so you're not technically really there for a long time. So yeah, we are winding down. We're at the final 2 films of the festival, which I specifically handpicked these to be the final two because I was expecting these two to be my favorites of the fest that I registered for. So yeah, that is it for this one. I will see you in a couple hours. All right, folks, we're back. It is 7:10 p.m. on January 25th. We have just finished the penultimate viewing of my 2023 Sundance Film Festival marathon, and by gosh, let me tell you, the fatigue is actually really starting to hit right now. It's not even remotely on the level of the Everything Everywhere All at Once video, but 9 films in 2 days is still a lot. So but that is exactly why I structured this viewing process in the way that I did. I said, hey, let me put the 2 films that I think look the most interesting at the end of the festival. So because if I was watching Magazine Dreams or To Live and Die and Live or Cat Person in these final 2 slots, I think that I would be less objective in my viewing experience because I would be so tired that those films that just drone on and on, don't think I'd be able to handle them. But I was able to handle, as I said, my penultimate viewing, Scrapper, the new film with Harris Dickinson and Lola Campbell introducing. And wowie zowie, it's a really, really great film. This is, of course, the directorial debut from Charlotte Reagan, and I don't like making comparisons like this, but there was another Charlotte last year that also had a really solid directorial debut that also touched on a father-daughter relationship, if you will. Now, I will say immediately, I do not think this is as good as After Sun, as I have a video on my Film Tape channel talking about how great I think After Sun is. But this film is still really, really good, and I had a really good time with it. Specifically, you need to talk about the performances from Lola Campbell and Harris Dickinson. Wow, wow, wow. I'll go into Harris Dickinson first. I thought he was really good in Triangle of Sadness. I enjoyed his performance there. I thought he was really good in Beach Rats. I enjoyed his performance there. This is the one that should put him into the conversations that he deserves to be in. This is his, and I know that I don't like making comparisons like this. This is his Paul Mescal's After Sun performance. This is it. He is so good, moving, so touching, very understated. I saw a tweet recently where it says, name a good male performance where they're just not yelling, and this is one of them. He is really, really great. And then specifically moving on into Lola Campbell, I am not using hyperbole or exaggeration when I say this is one of the best children's performances that I've seen at least in the past decade. At least. She is phenomenal. It is so hard for children who do not have the life experience to tap in to being able to portray grief on screen unless they've actually experienced it. And let me tell you, if Lola Campbell hasn't experienced grief, she absolutely fooled me, because I wholeheartedly believed her going through this grieving process, not sure exactly what to do at such a young age, making her way for herself, unsure of how to really ask for any sort of help. It is all done so well by her. Amazing. Top 3 performances of the entire, for me, top 3 performances of the entire festival. It's Jonathan Majors, Lola Campbell, Harris Dickinson. All 3 of them. Jonathan Majors obviously on another level, but these 2 really great. It's also just really wholesome. It's such a wonderful portrayal of father-daughter bonding and love and finding a common ground between parenting and friendship and navigating new dynamics in that type of dynamic specifically. It is a wonder to see. I will say the thing that once again is holding this back for me that constantly holds these types of films back for me is it as just the same as I sometimes think about Dying. It doesn't really take any risks with the source material. It kind of just plays it safe, and that's totally fine for this type of film. But I will say, again, I don't like doing this comparison thing, but if you want to talk about a father-daughter relationship film that does take risks, After Sun did do that. This kind of, once again, plays within the constraints that a film like this usually does. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad film at all. It is still so good and enjoyable and very, very resonant emotionally, you know? And it's a blast to watch, and I do think that this is another one that you can recommend to basically most people and they will enjoy. I do see this film specifically, out of all of the films that I've watched here, probably getting the most Oscar buzz, either this or All Dirt Road's Taste of Salt, from what I've seen so far. And not just because, spoiler, those are the two best films I've seen at the festival, but because I think those are the two most proficient technically wise. But then again, Oscars don't necessarily go on that. But you know, you kind of get what I'm saying. And another thing I will say, I kind of touched on this earlier, but this is the festival of emotionally stunted people figuring out how to either not be emotionally stunted or wallowing in their way of being emotionally stunted, and fantastic directorial debuts. Shout out to Charlotte Regan, man. Once again, another film that has a very direct vision and a way that they want you to see it. She is so good at navigating her way through relationships, and I love that. I love seeing that on film, especially just, you know, it's hard to display family dynamics, once again, without being super corny, without really going into melodrama area. It's so difficult to find nuance in that category where the melodrama is so easily accessible and it works so well, and we've seen it constantly work well in films. But there's none of that intense melodrama here. It's just two people getting to know each other when they should have known each other their entire lives, and that is a really nice thing to see. So in a way, this is kind of tackling it in a different way, but it still kind of maintains that more basic indie vibe to it. But that, again, not a bad thing. It's a really good film. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm going to give Scrapper a 7 out of 10, and it is going to fall to number 2 on my list of 9. It is going right below All Dirt Road's Taste of Salt, and right above Sometimes I Think About Dying. Dynamic performances from Dickinson and Campbell, really great directing from Charlotte Regan, all around proficiency in the technical aspects of things. I just wish it would have gone maybe a little bit more deep than it actually reached. Love the nuance of the film, but I wish there was just a little bit more there to grab onto. It is great though. I had a good time with it, loved it a lot. And that leads us into the last film of the festival, which I'm going to go watch right now. I will see you then, and we will conclude our journey. Yeah. Hello, how is it going? It is currently 9:41 p.m. on January 25th. And I have just finished my final screening of the 2023 Sundance Film Festival Marathon. And I just finished Slow, is the film that I finished. Now, I put this film at the end for a reason. I was really thinking, hey, this film looks from on a base description level, these websites all like do the log line as, hey, this is about a couple, a sign language translator and a dancer learning intimacy in a new relationship. And I say, wow, that sounds really heartfelt. That sounds really nice and pleasant to watch. That will be a good time. I am emotionally wrecked. This is 1,000,000,000% one of the best of the festival. I am also exhausted from watching it. And this time it is in a good way, but also I want to. Yeah, sorry, I don't think we can put that on YouTube, but just pretend you knew what I was saying. Yeah, no, not fun. Really not fun. Gorgeous. Everything gorgeous. Brilliant performances. One of the most fitting and gorgeous color grains that I've seen in a film this decade. So amazing on every front. I am watching this movie enthralled. There's representation for asexuality in the film, which is something that is very rare. Wonderful to see. Seeing these two people learn their way of affection in a new relationship where both aren't used to the other person's methods. Wowie zowie. I'm in. The first hour or so, I am saying to myself in my head, this is a 10 out of 10 film. This is brilliant. This is exactly what I want in a drama about romance. I want depth. I want beauty. I want everything working cohesively, and I will tell you everything works cohesively. I haven't done this much throughout this entire process, but shout out to the score on this one. Exquisitely done. Loved it a lot. Then the hour mark comes around, and it starts to slow down even more than the title would suggest, to the point where I'm still enjoying myself, but I do have to admit the pacing kind of just doesn't slow to a halt, but it really does detract from getting to where they need to go. So I'm like, 9 out of 10, this is still the best thing that I've seen at the festival. None of the technical aspects are changing because of this slowing of pace. So everything else is still great. And then the ending happens, and I lose my gosh dang marbles. Without spoiling anything, really. Listen, I am all for not happy endings. I'm all for it. That's my wheelhouse. I love to feel not good. But I only love to do that when the film sets the precedent of feeling not good. Is the relationship in the film complicated? Yes. Are there ups and downs and struggles? Yes. Is it all working to an ultimate purpose that is completely undermined by the last minute of the movie? Maybe 2 at most. Absolutely. There's this final scene tonally does not fit in whatsoever with the rest of the movie. It just doesn't. And that is frustrating beyond belief. I left feeling mad. And again, not someone to feel mad at a bad ending or a not happy ending. I actually think that the La La Land ending works. I know people aren't a fan of La La Land as much recently, but I think it works. I think it's good. It's fun. That's not this. It's not this. And it's so devastating because everything for this film was working to me, towards me. It felt like it was personally designed for me the first hour, even until the first, even just until the ending scene. This felt like it was working as a perfectly crafted film for me. I think that there are films that are like 9 out of 10s that are still perfectly crafted for me, but geez Louise, it fumbles so hard at the end, I can't even begin to describe it. That being said, it's still not, that doesn't at all erase the amazing technical proficiencies in the film, the amazing performances from our 2 leads. So well done. Oh, wow. An actual couple feel on screen. 2 people that have genuine chemistry. That's something else that I've actually been seeing in this film, in this festival a lot, is actual chemistry between people, which just for the record is awesome. But this one especially, there's so much to say about so many things, dancing and closeness and how those intertwine romantically. There's a lot to say about asexuality here. Some of it feels a little off kilter, but I'm not the person to make that call because I don't have enough experience with the subject matter. But man, just gorgeous. And I know I said it already, but the film grain blows my just so. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's great. And the ending comes in and just, oh man. so devastating. The whole film is kind of devastating in a way, but the ending just, I won't be able to sleep tonight probably, and that's all this film's fault. But Slow nonetheless is a wonderful film filled with wonderful things that will absolutely get my wholehearted recommendation if you have the stomach for it. I'm going to give it an ultimately, I almost missed the intro. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. It is going to, and I have been contemplating this for a while, it is going to slide in still with all of the things that I had to say about it, with the slow pacing that kind of detracts from the film, from the horrible ending that does not fit in with anything else in the movie. I'm still going to put this at my number 1 slot, but just barely above All Dirt Road's Taste of Salt. Am I feeling rambunctious and more animated because I am so tired and I just finished watching 10 films in 2 days? Mayhap. You don't know. I don't even know myself, really. What I do know is I'm going to go take a walk, a long walk, and hopefully that'll make me feel something better. I don't know. But yeah, so Slow is great. It is not my number 1 recommendation because, again, it is devastating. But it does get a recommendation from me completely. It is so good. That is it. We did it. We watched 10 films in 36 hours. That is nuts, I think, personally. I watched 7 films in 24, 10 in 36, feeling okay, ready to go to bed. I've learned that I don't think I can do same day / nights right after festival outros. So I will be doing that outro tomorrow morning, afternoon, sometime in that period. Thank you so much for following along on the journey. I don't know if I'll do stock footage or just me sitting here, but yeah. And stock footage meaning footage I go out and film myself. But yeah, okay. Thank you so much for following along this journey. And if this is the last time I'll see you in the next one.
Hi, hey, how's it going? This is Colin from 2 weeks in the future, from the time of recording that video. Lots of things have happened on the channel, but I kind of came to a realization that there isn't a moral to be learned here. There isn't a lesson to be taught. There isn't really a final statement to be made about a certain thing. You know, with the Everything Everywhere All at Once video, I was able to say, hey, give things more chances. I took a lesson from the film that I hadn't gotten before, but with this one, there's not really much of anything. I just kind of watched 10 Sundance films in 36 hours. I guess I could say would I recommend doing it or not. And if you have the time, but if you don't have the time, don't. More importantly, I'd recommend going to one of these festivals over going to or getting online screenings and doing it virtually. Going to a film festival with friends can be one of the most wonderful experiences, and just getting out and doing anything with friends, sharing your passion with friends in that real life sort of way is something that's awesome. And something that you can hold with you for the rest of your life. So I'd recommend that, I guess, if there's anything that you can get from this film. Up next, in the next couple weeks, we'll get the BoJack Horseman video out. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you all. And thank you so much for watching the Everything Everywhere All at Once video. And I put a lot of work into that and putting a lot of work into this, so I'm putting a lot of work into a lot of things. So yeah, I will talk to you in the next one. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.